Welcome everyone to episode 61 of the Looks Like a Movie podcast. My name's Kevin. I'm here with Doug. We've got another week here with no Owen. But that's okay. We will make it work. It's kind of like when you're growing up and your parents save up a lot of money for you to go to an NBA game and see LeBron play, and then he sits out for load management, you know?
It's kinda like, Kyrie leaving the Cavs in a way.
is, is
Um,
is Owen our Kyrie?
yeah, you don't think Owen's
Okay. Would
like a
that make me the
Kyrie?
LeBron then?
That would make you Kevin Love.
Oh, so you're a LeBron.
No,
I just feel like you don't have the skill
I'm not
set.
I know
I
I'm
feel
not
like I'm the
LeBron.
most I feel like I'm the most, like,
I don't no, 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 no,
well-rounded,
no, no, no,
you
I'm not
know?
LeBron. I'm none of us are here, okay, here's the thing, none of us are LeBron. I'm
The
I'm
listener is LeBron.
I'm J.R. Smith,
Okay.
okay?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Heat
I
check. Mr. Heat
yeah,
check over here.
you fit that a little bit, I think. I mean,
This
I'd
is
like to
crazy.
claim LeBron if he's, like, there, but anyway, well,
Well,
whatever.
yeah, I'm sure you would like to claim LeBron if he's there, Kevin.
A couple weeks ago, you were telling me that I keep this podcast together, but now I'm not allowed to call myself LeBron. I just feel like
You're Kevin Love.
this is
You think
okay.
Kevin
I
Love's
mean,
a
I'll
bad
take Kevin
basketball
Love.
player?
No, I love Kevin Love. He's one of my I love one thing about me is if a basketball player is named Kevin, they were probably one of my favorite players growing up. We grew up in a great era of Kevins, Love, Garnett, Durant.
Mhm,
I was
mhm.
I was thriving. It's the best name in basketball. Anyway,
So today we're talking about
yeah,
2
we're talking about
very awesome
Monkey
movies.
Man
Yeah,
and The First Omen, two of
yes.
the best movies of the year so far. Um,
This is probably, the best, like, doubleheader weekend we'll get all
Yeah,
year.
I mean,
Probably.
well, I don't know about all year because, sometimes we get two great movies in the same weekend, but definitely the best doubleheader of the year so far. I mean, not even
Mhm.
close.
Yeah, 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 of
But before that, we can talk about what we watched this week. Did you watch a lot
course.
this week, Doug?
A lot not a lot, but I did watch some stuff. I watched, oh god. Okay. I watched, Hamilton twice.
Yeah, I saw that. Wait, you watched it? Did you watch two different versions?
No.
Oh, you just rewatched it.
I just rewatched it,
Okay.
yes.
So
Um,
I was talking to my friend about that because she has been trying to get me to watch Hamilton with her. Like she has been saying, like, I'm gonna make you watch Hamilton, and I keep repeating, I don't think I'm going to enjoy Hamilton. And then I saw you log it and give it like 2.5 stars or whatever, and I was like, Doug watched it and he did not like it. I was like, listen, this is probably not for me.
you might like it.
The
It's,
thing is, I think I would like the music, but I don't think I would like how any of the information is delivered. Like, I don't think I would like what it
yeah,
is talking about.
yeah, that's kinda what I was getting at. I think it's like I think the music is, like, right up your alley, kind of. Don't take
Yeah.
that offensively, but I
No,
think the
I
music
won't.
is
I think
like
it's fun.
yeah, I think
I've
the
heard
music's
songs. I think they're
right up
fun.
your alley, but, like, the politics of the movie are, like, really terrible in a very
Yeah.
unique way. It's like they're
Yeah.
uniquely terrible in terms of, like, entertainment goes today,
Yeah.
like,
That makes
um,
sense. I'll
and then
watch it maybe eventually.
I also watched very quickly, I watched Terminator Salvation,
Okay.
which was the Terminator prequel, that came out in 2009, directed by McG, starring the great Sam Worthington and also,
Mm.
Christian Bale, whoever that is.
Whoever that
And,
is.
and me and our mutual friend, we watched, this movie called Detective D and the Mystery of the Phantom Flame together.
Okay.
Um
Lengthy name. I think I saw you log that. Can you give me some background?
It is a, Shu Hark film, this is a mainland Chinese film, I believe, about a detective, a real about, like there was, like, a real life detective that lived in, like, 600 BC or whatever the fuck, and this movie is kind of like like a fantasy version of, like, his about that guy, and
Right.
it's basically like Chinese fantasy Sherlock Holmes. It's really cool.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds cool. It looked cool when I saw you log it. That's your week?
Yeah, that's my week.
Okie doke. So I watched Hotel Mumbai to prepare for Monkey Man because I wanted to watch a Dev Patel movie leading up to Monkey Man. There's not too many. Well, he's not in that many movies, despite having a pretty big reputation.
Have you
I've
seen
seen
sorry, have you seen
what?
Skins?
I have okay, so I watched it a long time ago. I watched like a few episodes of it when I was much younger. I'd probably
Okay.
like to revisit it. I feel like I could be into it because I remember when sex education became a big deal, people were like, "Oh, this is kind of just like modern day Skins, but like maybe not
Yeah.
as, controversial. Maybe doesn't like push the envelope as much." Um, so I think I would like it, and I'd like to see him in it because it kind of birthed like a lot of the great British stars of the moment. Now, I
It
mean, like Daniel
definitely
Kaluuya was on
Oh,
there.
yeah, Dana Kaluuya. Nicholas Hoult
Um,
was on there too, I
yeah,
think.
Nicholas Hoult was on there. I think like they had quite the cast.
I think that Skins is more Euphoria than a Sex Education now,
Oh,
like,
sure,
for, like, a
sure, yeah,
cultural, because like,
yeah.
Skins
That
was such
that
a
makes
big deal
sense.
in the UK back in the day, but
Yeah,
yeah.
back in the day
Um,
when you were just a British teen.
yeah.
Um, yeah, no, that's a good comparison. But I watched Hotel Mumbai, and interesting movie to pick apart. I didn't write a review for it, but it it made me feel really fucking bad. I mean, there's like few movies I've seen in my life that were as difficult to get through as that. I like had a pit in my stomach the whole time. I paused this movie maybe more times than I've paused any movie. I mean, I was like, there's like sections throughout the movie where like every 10, 20 minutes I just had to like stop. And like I famously really struggle watching these kinds of movies. It's kind of the reason why I hated like Elephant, even though people really like Elephant. Or what's the Denis Villeneuve one?
Oh, not
I can't think of the
Polytechnique,
no, it is
Incend
Polytechnic.
uns
It is
oh, okay.
Polytechnic. Yeah, I'm referring to mass shooting movies.
Yeah.
Hotel Mumbai is a movie about a terrorist attack that uh, caused a lot of damage. A lot of people, hundreds of people, I want to say, died over the course of like a number of days. And this movie depicts it very true to real life, I guess. Although that's kind of the part of the movie that's a bit like interesting to deal with, because I've seen some criticism of the movie, and it's interesting how they present it because I believe a lot of the characters in the movie are made up people for this real event. Like they're not basing it off of a specific real person who was a victim.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people I've seen complain about the movie because it's like white director and it centers white characters. And I was like, oh, is this just going to be, like on the podcast a couple weeks ago, I mentioned that I was watching Slumdog Millionaire, which is another movie where a white man directs a film that is very much not for a white man. But I'm
Shout
watching
out
Hotel
Clint Eastwood.
Mumbai. Yeah, that's not a Clint Eastwood movie.
Fuck, it's Danny Boyle. I don't know
Danny
why I
Boyle.
always think
Yeah.
that's directed by Clint Eastwood, but
No.
I made that mistake multiple
It does
times.
it does feel like maybe something Clint Eastwood would make, but, no, but, like, Hotel Mumbai, like, once I watched it and then I was kinda, like, thinking about it, I was like, I mean, it's sort of not entirely the same thing. Like, the 2 characters that you end up caring about the most are not white, and also, the movie makes the white people in it look pretty bad. Like there's like moments where they're like outwardly racist. There are moments where like it's very clear that they don't understand the culture that they are like visiting as tourists, and stuff like that. And like they're not like, you don't like follow them along, and there's characterization things that are interesting where you're like, oh, maybe we're learning too much about these white people, and like the only thing you learn about like the Indian staff is that they just care a lot about the customers. Like that's their whole character trait, is like we just have to take care of the customers. But I'm like, by the time you get to the end of the movie, you realize that it makes a lot of sense because you're like, oh, these people are just like really compassionate in this like terrible tragic event. Like they care about other people, and it's like it really makes them look quite good. But it's fucking sad movie, dude. It was like really tough to get through. I ended up liking it a good amount, but I did not like how it made me feel. I'll never watch that movie again. Dev Patel was quite good in it as well. Uh, and then I watched Jerry. Me and Owen did a little flip. He watched After Sun, and I watched Jerry on the same day.
Yeah, you went
Um,
Jerry mode.
and I liked it. It
Yeah.
it was it was good. I mean, it's like gorgeous movie, and it made me quite emotional by the time I got to the end of it. And then the other day was Heath Ledger's birthday, and I watched A Knight's Tale, which is a movie that I had seen in pieces when I was younger, but I had actually never watched the whole way through. So I finally watched it the whole way through, and I was like, man, this is really fucking fun. Heath Ledger's kind of the goat, as I have always said. um, so
Yeah.
that was my week pretty
I
much.
I remember liking A Knight's Tale as a kid, as a wee lad.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a fun movie. I mean, I'm whatever. I'm surprised it's like got a little bit of a mixed reviews. It feels like one of those things that should have like a very positive following, but whatever.
well, all that
Okay,
kind of stuff.
yeah.
Anyways, that's not important.
We're gonna start, I think, with Monkey Man, and the reason
Okay.
why I suggest this is because these two movies, I went into this weekend, and there is no part of me that could have anticipated me struggling to decide which of these 2 movies I like more.
Yeah,
Like,
isn't that crazy?
I never would have thought that that's how I came out of this weekend, but that's the position I'm in, and I adored Mike Monkey Man. I was riding quite a high. Obviously, Dev Patel is one of my favorite people in Hollywood, so I was,
Mhm.
like, super, super pumped after watching it, and then I saw The First Omen last night, and you know what? I woke up this morning and I'm only thinking about The First Omen. I suggest we start
It's
with Monkey Man because
yeah,
I do still want to like continue that high. I do still want to like give it the praise that it deserves, but then I think we have a lot to discuss about The First Omen.
yeah.
So let's start with Monkey Man, which
Yes. Which is the movie most people are going to watch out of these 2
yeah,
movies,
I
probably
think I
for
saw
sure.
that they made a similar amount. I think First Omen is projected like 9 million and Monkey Man is 11 million.
Okay.
And
Yeah, so
Godzilla
it's not
X
too much
Kong is
more.
still beating both of them in its second weekend.
Um,
Uh,
I think it's so
unsurprisingly, but
it's funny how they're splitting the premium screens for these
between
movies
these two movies, yeah,
because it's like I kind of assumed that the Godzilla Kong movie would just get every premium screen,
yeah,
but it looks like it Godzilla Kong is getting all of the IMAX screens. This is at least
yeah.
what I've seen, and these are splitting the Dolby screen.
That's what happened by me, and actually, funny enough, I almost always go to this theater that is really close to my house, but there's another theater near my hometown that also has, like, a Dolby format, and I texted my friend, and I was like, "They're showing The First Omen at 11 p.m. at the theater we usually go to, but they were showing it at, like, 7:15 at the one by my hometown because they're going, like, back and forth screenings between The First
Yeah.
Omen and Monkey Man." So I was like, "Okay, we'll go to the other theater because I'm not watching this shit at 11 p.m." Like, it's funny that they're just going back and forth between the 2 movies throughout the day.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm very happy that they did that because I was able to watch both these movies in Dolby,
yeah,
which of course,
exactly, which is, like,
yeah,
awesome. I never would have
very
I mean, The
good.
First Omen
Yeah.
feels so much like a movie that I would never be watching in Dolby, which is we'll get to some of the positives of the movie, but when it comes to stuff like the sound design and whatever, it's
Oh,
like, it's awesome that we get to
yeah.
watch a movie like this in a premium format. Like, that fucking rocks, dude. Like, it's so cool. But yeah, Monkey Man, also a cool movie to experience in a premium format. And
Yes.
Dev Patel's feature directorial debut. Like we said before, he's acted in a bunch of stuff. Um, we could start with that little bit of background on the production of the movie, which is that the movie was originally a $30 million movie for Netflix that was going to be streaming and not playing in theaters. Netflix said that the movie was too gritty for the Indian market. We now know that the reason for that is because of some of the politics in the movie that we can touch on later. Um, and then Braun Studios, a co-financier of the movie, was hit with bankruptcy. So Jordan Peele stepped in
Yeah.
and helped get the movie a theatrical release. And the movie was acquired by Universal for like $10 million, I want to say, um, and got put into theaters. And now we're watching it in premium formats. And not to mention, along with all of this stuff, uh, there was actual like issues with the production of the movie in the sense that like Dev Patel broke his foot like 2 weeks before filming, and
He
then
got an
broke his
eye
hand
infection.
while
dur
filming.
Yeah, he like,
Yeah, an eye infection, like that, like really dedicated a lot to this movie and went through a lot to get it made. Plus, it was being filmed during COVID as well.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been in production since I think 2018. Like,
yeah.
that's crazy.
So this movie had like a long journey to get to where it is now, which is a movie that we just watched.
Yes.
And
Um,
thankfully it got a theatrical release, which is awesome.
yeah, I mean,
Is
I will say,
not
I
a
think
movie I
this
want to
movie
dump on Netflix.
no, not dumped for sure. This movie I think will play well at home though. I think this
Oh,
movie
sure.
will play
I think
well
people,
on a
yeah,
TV.
I
Um,
think people will enjoy it.
it so people keep it's kind of crazy how many people are comparing this to John Wick. Like I've seen
Yeah,
advertisements or where people were basic or I think I saw an advertisement where for the movie where the guy was like, "Oh, this is Indian John Wick." And I'm like,
yeah.
"Okay. Okay. I've seen
Eh,
lots of this." And I watched the movie and I'm like, "Huh." So, John Wick comparisons, there's a John Wick reference in the movie.
there's a John
But
Wick reference in the movie, which is,
and
like, silly, and I didn't mind it. I don't know if you hated it, but I
yeah,
was like, "It's
well, I
whatever."
mean,
I was like,
it's
"It's a
whatever.
fine joke."
But because I think it's fine because John Wick is such a big cultural, like John Wick is such a huge cultural touchstone, like one of our
Yeah,
biggest cinematic cultural touchstones in the last, since
10
John Wick
years.
came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I while watching it, I was like, oh, kind of right. Like it's like a revenge action movie,
Yeah, but
but
it's like,
the
I hate that
style,
that's how that's brought up. Like, I hate that
yes,
that's the way that John Wick is always referenced as, like, here's a action movie where someone's getting revenge for something. I'm like, this has been the plot of, like, every action movie for the past 50 years. Like, it's like
yeah,
like, this is what action movies are, is, like, something happens to someone, and then they go kill a bunch of people for revenge. Like, that's, like, I don't know why John Wick is, like, now the reference point for that. I guess because it's the most
it's so
popular
popular.
example,
Yeah,
but, like,
it's so
even
popular,
before
and
John Wick, there
it's
were
really
so many
good.
popular movies. Yeah, of course.
Um,
Um, but continue with what you were saying about the
well, because I was saying like the stylistic reference point that I was kind of seeing, and I'm not sure if this was a real reference point for Dev Patel or his editors or his DP or anything. It probably wasn't, but the movie Crank,
Okay,
starring Jason Statham, um, like the plot of Crank is totally different, something completely not like this at all.
but
But
the action
the action of Crank, the way things are shot, felt very
and
Crank. The way
edited.
like and edited, yeah, it felt like because Crank is kind of like well known, if you don't know, for like this really, I mean, Kevin, but the audience, I mean, it's
Right.
well known for like this like really like kinetic, like frantic energy through the movie because it's about this guy who's kind of a fucking psycho, that needs to keep his heart rate up. And if his heart rate goes below a certain point, he'll die. So it's about him
Yep.
like running around and like fighting people and like in these insane situations. And Monkey Man has that same kind of energy. It slows down, right? But
Yeah,
like
there's I mean,
especially
the story in the second
yeah.
act takes a bit of a, like, turn toward, story stuff, like, narrative stuff.
But when once the JID 151 rum
Yeah.
song
Great
comes
song
in,
choice. Great song choice.
I have a big problem with it because
Okay.
they censored it.
Oh, okay.
That song sounds
Fair.
so I mean, listen, incredible song choice, I agree. But like it's like they censored it, which makes the song sound so bizarre because he
Yeah.
says he curses so much in that song.
Yeah.
Did you notice that too? Because I like
No,
that.
yeah, it is a it's a weird decision in a movie that, I mean, the movie is rated R, right?
Yeah, like for sure.
Like, it's like,
um,
I don't
I,
yeah, I don't know if that's, like, a copyright thing.
I
That
don't know why,
probably doesn't make sense, though. Yeah, I don't
but
know what the choice for that is.
great song, of course, love that song,
Yeah, love that
and
song
it
as
brought like
well.
an incredible energy to the movie. But like
Yeah,
from when that song hits all the way to when Dev Patel gets shot by like the sniper rifle in the in the helicopter and he
right.
falls in the water. That's like I don't know, that's like a half hour of the movie, probably, maybe more, maybe yeah, probably a little more, right? That
Um,
shit is so that shit like just like goes and does not stop at all. It's
yeah,
like
there's a lot happening.
it is
There's
so crazy.
it's like the movie's very clearly divided into, like, long long sequences of exposition, and then, like, long action scenes, and it goes back
Mhm.
and forth between those 2 things throughout. Um, I personally thought it did it quite well, but I think it is I think it's noticeable, which, that could be a complaint from a lot of people. Like, it's not that it doesn't stand out to me because the movie, for those who, I hope you're not listening to this if you haven't seen it, but for those who haven't seen it, like, it very clearly feels like a movie that is pieced together. And a lot of that probably has to do with the stuff that we mentioned, the fact that this movie took a lot to be made. Also, like, originally was going to be a Netflix movie, and then presumably was cut down for a theatrical release. Like that, there's moments where there's moments where there's like some obvious holes in the narrative, where like stuff might get confusing for the viewer, and we kind of like jump between places, and like I said, like we go from long sequences of action to maybe a long time without action, and all that stuff. Um, and
Yeah.
like I could see that bothering some people.
I think the biggest thing that would probably that would probably bother like a viewer of this podcast or a listener of this podcast, is the way the movie's shot. I think if anything will bother them is the way the movie's shot is it's lots of close-ups. Lots of close-ups, lots of kind of like shallow focus close-ups, which and listen, I'm not like Owen. I'm not waging a war against shallow focus, okay?
Yeah,
I'm bringing this up because it's hard to tell what is happening a lot of the time. It's hard to tell like what rooms look like or feel like a lot of the time.
yeah,
And I think that that is probably, like these are smart filmmakers. I It's like intentional, like an intentional stylistic choice.
yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. You
Yeah,
know.
I agree. I mean, I think there's a lot. I think other than that stuff, which I agree. I mean, even in some action scenes, there's some stuff that's like a little bit hard to follow. Um, there's also some stuff that looks really fucking good. Like there's like long stretches of the movie and lots of moments in the movie that are shot really, really well. Like a couple come to mind, but I mean, I I think a kind of an example of what you're referencing in terms of fast editing and maybe moments where it's like a little bit hard to follow. There's a scene kind of earlier in the movie where Dev Patel has to steal this woman's wallet so that he can like work for her.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's a scene where the like 50 people pass this wallet around the city, and it is like so fast moving. And I thought it was so cool, but at the same time, there's like clear moments where you have no idea where you are because the wallet gets
Yeah.
like thrown up a like ladder, and then like it like cut the way that it cuts is very strange, and like you're like, oh, how is this thing moving throughout the city? But it's very fun to watch in my opinion. And I like I get that it was probably difficult to piece it all together, and in the editing room. um
Yeah,
I
that sequence that you're talking about specifically was for sure hard to follow if you're trying to follow like actually understand like oh like what the
Location.
sense of space and location and like
Yeah,
how far is this going and like how many like who's handing this off. But
yeah,
also that is again that's like something that like Dev with the editor probably agreed to do it like that and to be like, yeah, it's fine if people don't know, they, like, can't follow like those specific
yeah,
things
that's what
because
I'm
it's giving the
saying.
feeling of it traveling far and
And I
um,
feel that way about a lot of like the decisions in the movie, which is maybe why I'm not going to be as harsh on it as like maybe somebody who's more of a critic of the
mhm,
movie, which is that like there's a lot of moments where I can tell that some of the mistakes are like not mistakes of just a poor directorial debut. They're like clearly like issues that Dev Patel might have faced, and I think the moments where he shows that like he really knows what he's doing kind of make me overlook those mistakes mostly. In terms of like, maybe some of the editing being messy, or maybe some of it narratively not coming together like perfectly. Like just like little things like that where I'm like, this doesn't end up really meaning all that much to me, in terms of like affecting me negatively.
right.
Because there's just like there's so much cool shit in there. Like it's shot
Yeah,
so well. I
yes,
I think the action scenes are unbelievable. There's some genuinely like really creative, fun action ideas in there as well. Not even just like the actual choreography of the scenes, but just the way that he goes about some of them. There's like once again, this is a spoiler, and I don't want to spoil this for somebody who hasn't seen it, but like, who gives a fuck? Hopefully you have seen it. There's a moment where he like has to push a knife into someone, and he puts it in his mouth
Yeah, he puts it in his
and
mouth.
stabs him with like by pushing the knife with his mouth. I was like, that's fucking awesome. Like
Yeah, he
that's
does
so
it
fun.
because the guy he's trying to stab is holding both of his hands back. So like
Yeah.
he like is able to force his hand just to get the knife in him, and then he like puts it in his mouth and shoves his head. Dude, that's crazy.
It's fucking
Um,
awesome, dude. I thought that
yeah,
was so fun. Like I was like, little creative strokes like that. I'm like, this guy clearly has been wanting to make an action movie for a long time. Like
yeah.
this is
It's
clearly coming from a place of passion.
Owen. So Owen kind of talks about Thanksgiving. Uh, as Eli Roth being a big fan of horror movies or like slasher films, and it's like, oh, you could tell like, oh, this is a guy that's been waiting his whole life making a slasher film, putting in all of like the interesting ideas for kills that he's had in one movie, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of like what like Owen would say about Thanksgiving. That's kind of the vibe I get here a little bit with
Yeah.
Monkey Man, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a guy that like likes action movies and has kind of been thinking about like making an action movie for a really long time, putting in all these ideas that he's come up with over his whole life. Because there's a
I
lot
think
of
a lot of them
cool,
really work.
yeah, a lot of cool stuff. And this movie's so fun. Watch it with friends. If
Yeah.
you can. It's like this movie fucking rocks. And this is part of why I'm like, oh, I think this would really work at home too. Obviously, go see it in theaters if you can. But this where I'm like, this would work at home too because there's so many big like, oh, like moments where you just go like, oh shit, like
Yeah. No, I mean,
and the
there was a moment where I literally like tapped my friend next to me and I was like, I mean, it might have been the knife thing actually, where I was like, oh, that's fucking crazy. Like I got excited.
there's
Um,
in the first kind of like big fight scene that happened because like the movie is kind of swelling up. The first part of the movie is kind of swelling up to this. I guess it's kind of like the inciting moment for the whole plot. Not really. I mean, I don't know, but like for like this big fight that's happening, and you know that this is like the whole thing is kind of building up to this one fight scene, and in that fight scene, there's like it's Dev Patel fighting two guys in a bathroom, and Dev there's a moment where Dev Patel's character, whose name is Kid in the movie, like grabs a guy's leg and he like falls and his head fucking slams
yeah.
against the porcelain of a toilet and it makes a crazy noise. And I was like, oh fuck! Like kind of yelled, like
Yeah.
shouted a little bit in the theater. I was like, holy shit, because
Yeah.
it
I
just
mean,
feels
there's like
so.
I
Yeah,
think there's like probably like 5 to 10 moments in the movie where like you can have that reaction, like genuinely like awesome, get excited about an action scene kind of stuff. Did you like Dev Patel as an action star in this?
yeah, I love Dev Patel, the actor. Like
Yeah.
I've always, yeah, for sure.
I mean,
I
he's
think
unbelievably likable. Like,
Yeah, I've kind of been making the case for him for over a year now. I've kind of been
right.
campaigning for him to be James Bond. Um,
Yeah.
which doesn't feel appropriate to talk about now because we're talking about a movie he just directed. But
Yeah.
I will say like that would be very cool if he was James Bond. I would much rather him direct another action movie.
Of
If it
course.
was like if you can only pick one of those things, I would rather him direct another action movie.
Yeah.
Um,
I think he's like, well, one thing that he navigates well that maybe makes him more appealing to me as an action star than say like, like we just got The Beekeeper a little while ago, which was such a blast. I mean, like so much fun because of just how ridiculous it was.
yeah,
Uh
that movie
and
is much more John Wick than this is.
yeah, but Jason Statham in that
Mhm.
is not like both action star and emotional center of a movie. Like very much the emotional
No,
center of the movie is the woman who dies at the beginning of The Beekeeper.
yeah,
Um, like Dev Patel can go from like really exciting action star to like making you cry just because of his eyes like in a scene, like the way he looks in the camera.
mhm.
um which like you don't really get from like your typical mindless action movie, which like this is obviously not that. Like this is a movie with a lot of like political text, like a lot of there's a lot more going on than this just being like The Beekeeper, even though technically The Beekeeper is a political movie.
Yeah, you can
Um,
definitely show. Yeah, the Beekeeper has terrible politics. We kind of reference
yeah,
that in review though, but you can shut your mind off during Monkey Man, and you'll probably have a really good time. Maybe you'll think the second part of the film is boring,
yeah,
but you'll have a good time still. But this movie, it's conveying humanity. I think that Dev Patel, there's moments like when he first confronts the dude that he's trying to kill, get revenge on,
yeah,
um, in that bathroom, he pulls out the gun, and I think the shots in the trailer, or this shot was like floating around online. Maybe it was like a first look thing, but
yeah.
yeah,
The thing about his mother.
yeah, and he brings up his mother, and it's like this close up of Dev Patel holding up the gun, and he's conveying so much humanity in his face. He's like,
Yeah.
it's like, God, and it's not just like, oh, he's sad, or he's like, it's like there's like complex emotions on his
Yeah,
face.
like he's carrying the weight of this awful thing that happened to him, which we could talk about because that's like a key part of the movie is that the movie has a lot of flashbacks to Dev Patel's relationship with his mother. They lived in like a farming village that was just completely destroyed by the people who Dev Patel is now trying to get revenge on. One of those is the police chief. That's who Doug is referencing. The guy who he
Yes,
sees in the
yeah.
bathroom. He's the chief of police, and kind of like the guy who really like executes this whole operation. There's somebody above him, but he's like the face of like the action part of it at least. And he's like a real villain. And
Mhm.
there's a really tough scene where Dev Patel's mom is confronted by that guy, and Dev Patel is, like a little kid in the flashback and just like hiding up in the ceiling, like looking through the crack, and like, throughout the movie, you kind of get smaller flashbacks until we finally get to that scene where we like really see like the totality of what happened. um but as a result, like those scenes that we're talking about where Dev Patel is like clearly like overwhelmed, there's moments like I like that the movie like takes the time to have him kind of like struggle to collect himself, like when he's in that bar like as a server for the first time and he sees the guy and like he recognizes him and he's having like essentially like a full-blown panic attack, like he's like really overwhelmed and really emotional because he knows that that's the guy that's like responsible for the death of his mother. Like it's like a lot. And I think that that stuff works really well. Like it's nice to see this balance between action and emotion work as seamlessly as it does in this movie, I think. Despite the fact, like, like I said, like the movie's cut together a bit strange. Like even if you have issues with the narrative, I still think those two things work together really well. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that Dev Patel as an actor can do both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, the movie's very emotionally cathartic because
Yeah.
the movie the whole movie, listen, the whole movie is basically Dev Patel being like, "Man, I'm gonna kill this guy."
Yeah.
And then he kills that guy. And that's like kind of the movie.
Yeah. Um, there's a little bit more to it, and the big thing that is more to it that I guess we could talk about now, which is kind of the reason why Netflix lost interest in this movie, is that there is a figure in this movie who, like a religious figure in this movie who also has involvements in politics that like are less known to the general public of India, but very clearly behind the scenes is like controlling the political scene of India and like really controlling this like election that is upcoming. And it's fictional in this universe, but it's very clearly referencing like real life. But in the universe of Monkey Man, these are fictional characters,
Mhm.
and that character, that this religious figure who's at like the head of the operation, who I said is in control of the police chief and everybody else. The ending of the movie, he is confronted by Dev Patel, and Dev Patel kills him. That's like the very end of the movie.
Yes.
Um,
We did say we were spoiling this movie, right? Because we just,
yeah,
yeah,
well, we've already
that's like the
referenced spoiler.
last,
We've already
yeah,
referenced like spoilers like 5 times now. If people are still listening,
because
I
that
don't
is truly
really,
the last thing that happens in this whole movie.
yeah, that is like the very ending of the movie.
Yeah.
And so that's why Netflix was not interested in it, because that figure can very easily be compared
There's, like,
to real
parallel
life
yeah,
figures in India. What's his name? Modi, who is like the prime minister of India currently, has been the prime minister since like 2014, I want to say, and is like up for re-election currently. And like the political climate, without getting into too much detail in India, is that like there's a real movement because of him towards like Hindu nationalism, and religious minorities are being targeted while he's in power. And the movie kind of pretty clearly like talks about that. Maybe not in detail, but like like that idea of um, people being cast out because of this like overwhelming religious figure who like a lot of people are following, and whoever is not is in danger, and in a lower class essentially.
yeah.
Like it's a main idea of the movie, and so the movie ending by killing that figure can be a little bit controversial, um, for Netflix, I guess, at least. Which is why it ends up being this studio movie that we see in theaters. Um, yeah, I thought all that stuff was pretty interesting. I
Yeah,
think as like an underlying, because obviously like the core of the movie is like guy getting revenge for his mom. Like
yeah,
that's like
I think on that level, it's, emotionally effective, you
yeah.
know?
But I think the fact that it ties in the politics for me was pretty interesting. I whether it's done effectively, who's to say? Well, like other people are to say. I don't I don't know enough about the political climate of India to like really have a strong opinion on it. But in terms of just like, poor people being abused by those in power and somebody wanting to get revenge for that, typically an idea that you can agree with. Um, and I think it made for interesting commentary in this movie. Especially because like some of those depictions are really really good. I mean, there's the scene where like he kind of like walks out into the big crowd, and I was like, oh, that kind of fucking rocks. There's some really good moments with that. We talked about the soundtrack a little bit, which I really like. I mean, you talked about the what
The
song was
JD
it?
song.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's like a
there's, like, a
number
bunch
of
of stuff.
those. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
like a lot of good like rap songs where I'm like, oh, this is like really fun in terms of like how it plays with the style of the movie
A lot
and
of, like,
how
really,
fast it moves.
like high energy needle drops in the
Yeah,
movie.
exactly.
Um, uh,
Um, I really liked those. I really liked a lot of like the color in like the nightclubs,
yeah,
um
I like
and
how
even
a
like some
lot of
other
it
there's
was
like a scene where
purple.
he's like yeah, there's purple. There's also like a scene with like some really cool color where he's like in the back of a car, like a taxi or whatever. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of like moments like that where I'm like, oh, the movie looks fucking awesome. Like atmosphere wise,
Yeah,
I
like,
think can create something really cool.
'cause there's levels, of the tower or whatever in the building that are, like, nightclubs that are, like, with, like, neon fluorescent lighting, maybe not f but
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like, colorful lighting and, but, like, everything that happens, which are, like, extended fight scenes, that happen on the and these places, are just lit like that, and, it's cool, like, it's a cool vibe, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean the vibes of the movie in general are quite fun. Like in terms of like atmosphere and like creating this world. And yeah, I thought overall really cool. Oh, we should talk about that second act that we were referring to, I guess.
oh,
Because
right, yeah.
there's a lot of like exposition in the second act. There's a training montage that's like very reminiscent of like a Rocky kind of thing, like a
Mhm.
Rocky like get ready for your big fight kind of thing, um, which is really cool. So he's like, Doug was referencing the scene where he kind of like goes on the run, and then it eventually ends with him like falling in the water, like unconscious probably, which is another really fucking cool shot, by the way. I really like the underwater stuff in that scene. But then he wakes up and has not been arrested, even though he was previously arrested, he broke out of he broke out of a cop car or whatever. Um, and then he ends up in this community that is kind of like on the in the margins of society, really, like living. I, I don't know how you would describe where they live. It's like
I
almost like underground.
Well, they live in, like, it's kinda like, it's a large building. I think it was kinda like a community style, like, building, like, for I'm assuming, like a religious, like, churchy thing, right? But
Yeah,
I think the implication is that they don't necessarily own that property, and
right.
they're, like, squatting there.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I'm not
And
sure. Maybe
so
that's what I got out of it, though. Like,
yeah, so this is a community of mostly made up, or I guess I don't know if it's entirely or mostly made up of trans women who have like a history of being warriors. I guess I don't know much about like the mythology of the story that's kind of like at the center of the movie, so I don't know if I could describe it very well.
it's like
Um,
he Dev Patel wakes up, right? Like, and they tend to his wounds, and then there's this person is basically like, yeah, man, we're like gender abolitionists. Not, I mean, they don't say that, but they're basically like, yeah, it's kind of corny in the movie the way they're like, um uh neither
yeah, yeah, he
male
was
or
like, yeah,
female,
yeah, it
but
was like
also both.
man, woman, neither, both
Yeah,
is
man,
like
woman, neither, both. Yeah.
just like
um
those 4 words. I don't know if I'd call it corny, but
it's kind of corny.
okay,
um
I
and,
guess.
and like in the movie it felt kind of corny in the moment. I don't think listen, I don't think that gender abolition is boring. I think that the way that, like, anyways, I think the way
Yeah,
that
okay, fair
moment was
enough,
played was kinda boring. Oh, not boring, corny.
fair enough.
Yeah.
But then he ends up kinda, like, training in this community while they're helping him recover. They, like, heal him pretty much and, like, help him, like, come back to full strength, and then in those later moments at the club where he kind of where we get to the final fight sequence and all the stuff that we mentioned, they come along and kick some ass with him. They he's like cornered by a group of like 30 people or something, and like you'd think it's like over for him, and then the elevator opens up and a bunch of them run out and start fighting everybody, which is like an awesome scene in the movie. I mean, just like a lot of cool shit there, and then he kind of does the rest on his own in terms of killing the police chief and the other guy. But that's
Yeah,
like that's a part of the movie where I imagine some people might lose a little bit of interest just because of like how long he's kind of in that recovery section. But also that's a part of the movie where we get the flashbacks and we get like the full scope of his story with his mother. So like a lot is being thrown at you for that chunk of the movie that's not action, which I thought was all interesting. So I really enjoyed it. um, yeah, I think as a debut, very strong. I think like clearly shows signs of somebody who knows how to direct a movie well. Um, and obviously he's a great star. I'm curious if his intention is to star in everything he directs, or if he like really wants to like move towards directing things as just a director. I don't know, but
yeah, I don't know.
because like obviously this is like a passion project where like he wanted to be in action roles, but he was never like selected for these roles, and so he directed it himself and put himself in it. And I wonder if that's something he'd want to keep doing. But regardless, I think I'd be really excited for anything he does after this. Like regardless, whatever his next project is, I'm going to be really pumped for. Because
Yeah,
he's just a guy who I really like. And it's really cool seeing this actor who I'm a huge fan of, like one of my favorite actors working today. Like take on a passion project as a director and like nail it mostly for me. Um, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Anything else you want to say about Monkey Man?
you caught me mid yawn. Sorry, over here. I um that was not yawning because you were boring. I was sorry, but fuck. Yeah, I think that it's a good debut. It's a good feature film debut. Might not be the most impressive feature film debut. Actually, it probably is. I think it's more impressive as a debut than The First Omen is, considering that Div Patel
Is the
did
first
not
one
direct.
a debut though?
Yes,
I thought she had done.
she did TV. She's only ever done TV.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
interesting. I mean, I knew that she did a TV show. I didn't realize that that was
yeah.
all
We'll
she
talk
did.
about that in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
um,
Um,
but yeah, I think that it is a good debut. I think that it's directing action movies requires like a specific kind of filmmaking that is different from other kinds of filmmaking. It's like most similar to horror, but directing like these kind of like long sequences where you're beating people up, it's a lot of choreography and it's a lot of like there's another thing too. That I like this in Monkey Man. This was in my notes that I just now opened. I like this in Monkey Man. Um but I don't think that it was necessarily like the most technically proficient thing ever. He moves the camera around a lot in the movie. Like there's a lot of handheld where the camera operator is obviously like just like he is moving.
yeah,
And I think it looks cool. I think, and it goes back to this kinetic energy, but it's not the most technical filmmaking in the world. And that's
sure,
kind of like my like I guess like to wrap it all up, here's my thoughts about Monkey Man is like really good movie, really fun movie, maybe not the most technical made movie in the world. You know what I mean?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good summary. Um, Now we're going to talk about The First Omen, which, like I said at the beginning of our talk about Monkey Man, is a movie that I have not stopped thinking about since watching it last night. That I kind of immediately want to rewatch, which apparently I did not know was a feature debut as well. So maybe we start there with Arkasha Stevenson, who is the director of The First Omen,
Yes.
and a really good
Co-writer.
one at that. A
Oh my god, she
really
directed
good
the
one.
fucking hell out of this movie.
Um,
Holy shit. So, and it's interesting because I don't know how often this happens, where you get a debut that is as well directed as this, but
yeah,
because she
maybe
has
never.
well, well,
Other
because she
than
has
like, it's, you know,
yeah, well, yeah, because she has years of filmmaking under her belt. She's like done like short films, of course,
yeah.
like out of school or whatever. But then she her first kind of like big gig in the industry was Channel Zero. Are you familiar with Channel Zero?
Heard of it, not really familiar.
So Max is a huge fan of Channel Zero, and Max actually would be like a perfect guy to have on to talk about this movie, but that did not work out because he hasn't even seen it yet when the time we had to record. But
Yeah.
Channel Zero is it's kind of like this it's this horror TV show that had like a big cult following. I think it was on AMC, and it went for like 4 seasons. And Arkasha Stevenson um, was not like the showrunner, but she was like she directed. I think that she like directed and was like involved with like the writing of the fourth season. So like that was like kind of her first big thing was that she was like super involved with season 4 of Channel Zero, um,
Yeah.
which is like I'll speak for Max here, friend of the pod, Max. The
Uh-huh.
Max has told me in private that he thinks that Channel Zero is like the best horror TV show ever made. Um,
Interesting.
yes,
Okay.
and so that was like her first big thing with Channel Zero. And then a little bit more recently, she did a mini series on. She didn't do this, but she was a part of a mini series on Netflix called Brand New Cherry Flavor, where
Right.
I think she directed. Somebody could fact check me, and this would be easy for me to look up. But I think she directed like the pilot and the finale for that. She didn't direct all of it, but I think she did like the pilot and the finale for that, which is like like a higher budget,
Significant
like
episodes.
yeah, yeah. Um, and now we have this, which is this fucking movie, which is yeah, it is a franchise movie. It is a studio franchise movie.
Yeah, studio horror. Uh, it's like the fifth Omen movie or something like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
fourth or fifth for sure.
yeah,
It's
like
it's
it is a prequel to the very first Omen movie.
yeah,
Um,
coming off the heels
and
of The Exorcist Believer, which is
yeah,
another
like
studio franchise
just
movie.
like like when stuff like this. I mean, that is really why. the big takeaway from the movie, other than like everything that we're going to talk about that we really like about it, is like we're not gonna be more surprised by a movie this year. Like, there's not going to be this like doesn't happen. Like, there's not a situation in which this deep into like a horror franchise, studio horror film comes out that like nobody really is talking about because it's just like another installment in this franchise that like at this point, who cares? And then it comes out and you're just like, oh, and like you forget that they could look that good. You forget that they could be that good. You
Yeah.
forget that they could be like this scary and exciting and acted well at like all of it. Like you're just like, how is this a movie that exists?
Yeah, same
Uh
cinematographer as, The Evil Dead 2013, which is another,
like fun
yeah,
horror movie
yeah.
in a
I'm not the biggest
franchise.
fan of that movie, but that
I
movie's
really like that movie, but
okay, yeah. The
yeah.
movie's
Well,
good,
you know, I'm not gonna like act like it's a masterpiece or anything, but
but it has a huge cult following, and
yeah.
people really connect with that movie. Um,
This
uh,
movie deserves that. I mean,
yeah,
this movie is like when I was watching it, I don't know what moment in the movie exactly it happens at, but when I was watching it, I I I felt, and this wasn't even that deep into the movie. I don't even think I was halfway through the movie when I realized this. But I'm watching the movie and I'm like, this is kind of like a generational horror movie. Like I was watching it and I was like, this is like what it must have felt like being in theaters watching The Exorcist. Like
yeah,
I was like overwhelmed by the fact that it felt like I was watching what the way that I tweeted about this, I think, and I might have put this in my review, but like the way that I said it was like it feels like this kind of movie doesn't exist anymore.
yeah.
Like it
This movie
felt like I
feels
was
and
watching a horror movie that came out in the '70s, but it came out today,
yeah,
which is, like, unbelievable. You know, there's, like, several scene even, like, some of the wide stuff, just, like just, like, shots of the city and whatever. I was watching them, and I was like, "This looks like it fucking" I was like, "This looks like a movie that came out in the '70s." Like, I was like, "Holy shit, dude." Like
it's like so there's probably like 6 or 7 moments, where something visually happens, maybe even more than that, where something visually happens that makes me go like, "Oh my god." But I will say like, and we might hit all of them. I don't know. We'll see how long we talk about this movie. But there's
the number for me is, like, 20 to 30, dude.
it's but
It's like
there's like kind of like 2 big things that happen in the movie. They're not even big, but there's like 2 moments where it's like one of them's early on where she gets, and we're going to talk about what the movie's about in 1 second, but one of them's early on where our main character gets like into her new home where she's going to be living for the foreseeable future, right? And her roommate comes in and they're talking, and it cuts to a fucking split screen, and it is a true like actual split screen,
yeah,
right? But like in the in-universe split screen is like, oh, it's like the
mirror.
reflection, it's a mirror from like her dresser or something, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, that was like when that happens, I was like, okay, like this is actually like this movie's not fucking around, right?
Yeah.
And then later on in the third act, there's a huge reveal in the movie where our main character starts, it's like it's something that it hits our main character like a train, and our main character starts acting differently. And the second she starts talking a little different, that's when it hits me where I'm like, oh, this is the greatest movie ever made, actually. Um, okay, but to get into it, this
Yeah.
movie is about um uh uh a novitiate. It's like she's not a nun, but she's getting ready to be a nun. She hasn't taken her
Yeah.
vows.
Yeah.
Um so whatever.
She goes to Rome to take her vows, like to
Yes.
enter this
This
community of nuns and
yeah.
whatever you call you know, I'm bad with
Yeah,
religious stuff.
nunnery. Yeah.
It's not an important detail.
No.
But she goes there to join them and to do those vows, and she is like living there and working among them prior to taking these vows.
Mhm.
Like she's like integrating herself. She's American and she's come to Rome, so like Italian is not her first language. She doesn't really know much Italian. Um,
You will notice
So
something if you've seen another movie that came out recently. Everything we just said is the exact same premise of Immaculate so far.
yes, yeah. So if
This
you
is
listen
what
to our Immaculate episode, you don't even need to listen to the summary of this movie because it is the same plot.
no, it's no, I mean,
You know,
that's kind of
not
that's where the
not
differences end.
literally. Yeah,
Yeah, the
not
difference is
literally,
gonna end
but
here
it's the
a
same
little bit.
setup. It's the same
Yeah,
setup and it's the same like
similar endings.
similar endings, but the same without I don't want to spoil this detail. The how would you say the villain, the
These movies are
the
both about birth. You know, these movies are both
yes,
about
yeah,
like
there you go, there you go.
women's bodily autonomy and birth. I will
Yeah,
say that like
the issue at the center of it and what the
the,
specifics of that issue are the same exact idea.
but
Um,
the Immaculate is much more broad and is also very much way more direct about like, oh, Immaculate is a movie about abortion, right? And
yeah,
that's like, and that is, I think, very direct and very specific. This movie is not nearly that specific and direct, and it is kind of about a lot more than just one simple idea. I think. Okay, do you think that makes sense?
yeah.
Do you think it's a good
No,
way to put
that
it?
no, I agree. But yeah, so she gets there and similar to Immaculate, she learns more information about the place she's in and she starts to question what's going on there. You know, to summarize it in as little words as possible. You know,
Yes.
there's a little girl involved who is like clearly a tortured little girl. Like,
Hmm.
you know, they put her in this place called the bad room. Like, there's clearly something wrong with her. She takes a liking to her because she sees herself in this little girl because she was in a similar position when she was in an orphanage in America when she was younger. Actually, the reason why she's here in Rome is because one of the priests at this orphanage in America that she was in is here in Rome and invited her there, which
Hmm.
is a key detail in the movie. So yeah, that's the setup of the movie, and then everything happens from there. The main character is
Played
played
by
by Nell Tiger Free,
yes,
who is who
also from
gives
TV.
a generational performance.
Truly, I posted a TikTok this morning that I recorded last
I
night.
saw this TikTok, yeah.
Where and I say this, and I hate TikToks. I'm gonna stop maybe anyway, but but I kind of like I say in this TikTok, and I believe this. Like Nell Tiger Free gives the best performance in this movie that we will see all year. Oh, like there's like no way. I really think maybe I might be exaggerating, right? And I might be dumb, but there's like no way there's a better performance that happens this year, right? This is like fucking generational shit. This is insane. Like this is
It's
crazy.
it's kind of it's the most I can think in recent memory of watching somebody who I have never seen before in anything
Hmm.
and immediately being like, "This person needs to be among the biggest names in Hollywood."
So,
Like
do you
I
know
can't think
what
of another time where that has happened to me recently to this degree.
Nell Tiger Free's big thing before this was?
Yeah, she was on uh what's the show? I know people really like this show. I can't think of the name right now, but it's a one-word show. You can tell. Give
Yes.
me the first letter. Give me the first letter.
S.
S.
Okay,
It's like it's not sanction. It's like
no, it's she's on Servants,
servant. There you go. Okay.
right, and Servants is the M. Night Shyamalan show,
Right.
where he's the showrunner of that. Rupert Grint's also on that, but she's, like, one of the main characters in Servant. Um, that's what are the odds? Come on, M. Night is such the fucking goat, dude. M. Night's the
Yeah.
goat. Yeah, but, and that's, like that was, like, the big thing that she was on. This is now probably her big thing, but,
Yeah.
sh
Um
she's so good in this.
yeah. And I want to talk about specific moments, but I think one moment where she sort of completely pulled me in terms of like, oh, she is really fucking good at this acting thing is I want to say like pretty early into the movie. There's the scene where you were talking about where they're talking in the mirror. Her roommate who was also part of this thing, who was also there to get her vows and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, she invites her to like a night out to like go to this club, and she's like, you know, we're gonna take our vows, like we're gonna be abstinent after this, like let's go have a night out.
Yeah.
And like her on this night out, she meets this guy. They meet these like two guys. She specifically spends the night with this one guy. Um, I was just like overwhelmed by this scene, which like later is recontextualized. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But in the moment of the scene before it is recontextualized, I was like, I am watching like the sparks fly. I'm watching like this like unreal like chemistry. Like I'm so invested in her character and how she is handling this situation. I was like, I'm watching a horror movie and there's like a 20-minute section where it feels like a rom-com. Like what is I was like, what is going on? Like
There's
it she was so believable in that as like somebody who is both like innocent and like has never like been in this setting before, but
yeah.
also like somebody who is now in that setting and like meets somebody who like she has a real interest in and like a real spark with. I was like, I I loved her. I was like really rooting for her. Like
Yeah.
immediately just like pulled into this like once that happens for the rest of the movie, I'm just like so invested.
And
Like
that scene, and also especially how it's recontextualized later, but that scene is kind of a testament to how fucking well written this movie is for some
yeah.
reason. Where the because there's a moment, or she's a teacher, so right now, she because this it's an orphanage where she is working at, where she is going to take her vows. It's like a church and an orphanage.
Yeah, so she's like
Um,
teaching a classroom full of kids.
Yes, yeah, and that's like her job. And there's a scene where these kids are teaching her, because she like has like really broken Italian. She doesn't really speak Italian.
Yeah.
And there's the scene where these kids are teaching her how to say a phrase in Italian, and they're like working on it, and she's like, "Oh, like what does this mean?" And the kid's like, "Oh, it means I'm a teacher and I love to teach."
Yeah.
And the scene in this nightclub that you're just talking about, this guy, he's like, "Oh, like, what do you do? Like, who are you?" And she's like,
And
"Oh,
she
since you
repeats it.
ask," and she repeats this Italian phrase that she doesn't understand that the kids told her. And we get the subtitles, and it says, "I am a butterfly, so I must fly," I think is exactly what it says,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Something like yeah, I'm pretty close to the exact quote.
and
Um,
that guy's reaction is, it's so like, it's
yeah.
perfect. It's incredible, right? Am I crazy? How
No, I mean,
well
it's
that
like
moment plays? Like,
listen, dude, I mean, I don't remember exactly how far into the movie that takes place,
not
but,
super, like a half hour, maybe,
but
probably a
once
little
I
bit
like,
more, but
once we got to that part, I was like, I'm watching some like, I was like, "I'm watching one of the best movies I'm gonna see all year." Like, I was like, this is unreal stuff." So we talked about Akarsha Stevenson. We talked about No Tiger Free. Really, the two stars of the movie, them two. Like
yeah.
a director actor duo that just absolutely kills it. I really liked everybody else.
This movie is so well cast. That was also, like, one of my biggest takeaways the first time I watched it, was, like,
Yeah,
this movie is, like, actually perfectly cast in, like, a really crazy way, because there's no big stars in it. The most
yeah.
famous person in this movie is
Ralph
probably,
Ineson,
yeah, Ralph Ineson,
who
who's
is
just, like,
awesome. I
yeah, he's
love Ralph
great,
Ineson every
but
time I see him.
he's not a movie star, you know?
No,
He's a
I mean,
character
not even
actor,
close.
like,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's like a guy he's one of the guys who even in the mainstream, I feel like is one of those guys that people, like, see on a screen and they're like, "Oh, I recognize that guy," like, he's like one of those guys.
Yeah,
Um,
in that movie, I was like, "Oh, that's like, obviously, like, that's an actor that I've seen before." I could not name a
yeah.
movie he's in. I know now he's, like, in, like, Harry Potter or whatever, but,
Yeah, I mean, I love Ralph Ineson. I think he's great. I mean, I loved him in, and you probably loved him in The Witch as well, where he's, like, also
yes,
kind of
he's the dad in The Witch, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's very good actor, and I really like him, and, he kills it here, dude. Like, he was perfect for the priest he's
He's so
playing.
good.
I think he's perfect. I think the roommate who we were talking about, I don't know the actress's name because I don't know where she lands on the credits here.
Yeah,
Um,
she's,
Maria Caballero, I
yeah,
think.
she's in Nothing. She's in fucking
Yeah, she's
nothing.
never been in anything. Um, unbelievably good in this.
Where did they get this lady? Where did they get this
Then there
she's
I
so
think she's been
good.
in TV maybe, but, like,
Okay.
over there. And then, Ishtar Curry Wilson, who plays, like, another worker there who, spoiler, we're gonna everything from here on out is
Oh,
spoilers.
we had to spoil the movie. We're gonna go through the whole plot because you got
Yeah,
it. There's so much to unpack
yeah.
here. I'm sorry, guys. But
So she kills herself
Oh,
in
yes!
front
I
of
was like, "Who is this actress you're
everybody.
talking about?" Yeah,
And
she's so
she
good.
is real. I mean,
Another
she
lady that's not
later
in
in
anything.
the movie, she shows up as like like the ghost of herself, pretty much. Like she's seen, and the main character has visions of her, and she's communicating with her, like talking to her. She shows up in like some really scary scenes. She is terrifying in all of them. She is like unset. I mean, and really, I should be talking about what happens even before this suicide scene because the moment where she is introduced, which is
Yes.
another crazy shot in the movie among like one of the 9 million crazy shots in the movie.
This movie is
But
so is shot it's impossibly
it's just
well.
composed so well. Like every frame is like actually like perfect.
But
It's
it's not
kind of
like
unbelievable.
but it's also it's
Um
not overly stylized,
no,
you
not
know?
even close. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like it
it's like
all makes sense in the
yeah.
atmosphere of the movie and like and how it plays. Like it's like perfect, honestly. Like it really is like unbelievable that once again the movie it probably has some studio influence, can have a director that like just has pretty much total control over like these unbelievable images.
Yes. Well,
Um
they did make compromises, and we're gonna talk about
yeah,
I don't know
well
if you know
yeah,
about
you know.
this, actually, but
I yeah.
okay, okay.
But but she's introduced and like she's on the staircase and just like doesn't talk and just like stares. And immediately you're like, "Oh, that is the creepiest person I've ever fucking seen." Like and that's pretty much her. There's another scene even before she kills herself where she's like hiding around a corner. Like the main character like sees her hiding around a corner and her face is just there. I'm like, this woman is terrifying. I was like, she is really fucking good at
She's
this.
just, like, scary but it's, like it's one of those things where in the context, she's scary because in real life, it's like, "Oh, like, this is just, like, like, a woman with a really sad life," That's, like, kinda, like, in a terrible situation. Like, up until like, before we even really learn what's going on in this, orphanage, we're just that's, like, kinda, like, the vibe I think that you can pick up from her, and it's like, oh, like, there's no reason to really be scared of her. She's just, like, kind of a sad, person that probably hasn't been allowed to grow up all the way or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like, in the context of her because our character is like not comfortable where she is. She's like, oh, there's like fucking some weird stuff going on, and I'm not fitting in super well. And
Yeah.
yeah, you
And
see her
then
fucking around corners.
yeah. And then there is the last person who needs to be mentioned is the character of Carlita, played
Yes.
by Nicole Serace, I want to say. I might pronounce that wrong. Um,
Yeah.
so she is the younger girl who we mentioned that the main character realizes like something is going on with and like tries her best to take care of.
Mhm.
And that relationship is like the core relationship in the movie between the two of them.
Probably the most
Another
perfect casting in the whole movie is Soras, whatever.
yeah,
Because she doesn't have that many lines. So a lot of it is she's playing physically, and she does such a good job because it's not just like y- she's not just invoking empathy where it's like, oh, I feel bad for this character, right? It's not just like, oh, like we need to save this little girl. It's also because it's a horror movie, she's invoking like, it's like, oh, there's something weird going on too. Uh she has such a specific look. It's so I don't know. It's incredible that they found this lady to play this character.
and
Um
the other thing I want to mention about them two specifically is like similar to kind of that scene in the nightclub where like I'm really drawn to the main character. When you get to like see these two people alone,
mhm.
I'm like overwhelmed by how much I care about their relationship to each other. Like there's like a scene where they're like sitting on a bench talking and I'm just like, "Oh, like I really care about what happens to her." Um yeah, like it's just like you said, it's written really well. Like you really care about these people in this horror movie. Like it's like they the way that it incorporate like all of these, even fucking Ralph Innocent's character, who like really you have no reason to care for other than the fact like he
He's
is
also
the
in literally 3 scenes.
yeah. But like everybody, I'm just like, damn, like they're all perfectly cast. They all like are written very well.
All performed super well. Like,
Yeah, like the fact that all these pieces I mean, I know we've already said this, but like the fact that all those pieces come together like in this way for this movie specifically, it's just unbelievable. Like I was like, how the fuck is this happening right now? But yeah, I thought her relationship with Carlita was like so good. And so to kind of get back to like plot stuff, the thing that I was referencing before, that Immaculate does that I didn't want to like say directly, but like now we can since we're in spoiler territory. Um, the goal of this place that she's at, the goal of the church is to birth the Antichrist
yes.
and uh, put him among the rest of the world because the political climate and the environment of the time is that young people are losing interest in religion. They are like
Yeah.
protesting and rioting and they don't care as much about the church. And so they're trying to birth the antichrist so that they could have him cause chaos and steer people back in the direction of religion.
It's kind of
Um
a fascinating um thing to think about, right? Where this like religious body, they are so scared of atheism. And
yeah.
like to them, like atheism is kind of like the ultimate. Atheism is so evil and such a thing that they like need to protect people from, that they think that actually giving in to the devil and and birthing the ants and like unleashing the antichrist in the world
Yeah.
would be better than for atheism to continue to grow. That's like, isn't that a crazy thing to like
No,
that's a
I mean,
crazy
it's
thing
like,
to consider.
there's
Like,
I think in this movie especially, and I don't wanna keep comparing it to Immaculate, but, like, Immaculate doesn't really, like, go out of its way to, like, kind of talk about this as
mhm,
directly. Like, this movie is very clearly being like, "Here is how the church abuses their power." Like, these are, like, the steps that the church is willing to take, and it also, like, uses Ralph Innocent's character in the most interesting way to, like, kind of, like, present this contract. Like he has a line, another like great piece of writing. Like he has a line where he's talking to our main character and he's like, he's like, there's their church and then there's the church that we're a part of. Like
mhm.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
What the fuck, dude? I was like,
yeah.
that's fucking awesome. Like it's like, like very clearly like showing this divide between like people who are religious and like and still moral versus like the church that is in power making these decisions and trying to do this really evil thing to like instill people's faith in the church still and still have control over an entire population essentially.
I think he
um
specifically says like it's like something along the lines of like, oh, like you and I are like followers of God, but they are willing to turn a blind eye to murder and rape, you know? And it's like,
yeah,
wow, they're being really fucking direct here, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean it's really fucking cool. um even like, we didn't even mention this, but even like the way that that's used in the opening, where we see a priest who was like responsible for what they're doing, like working
mhm,
alongside them, show up to Ralph Innocent's character and like, do his confession and like very clearly feel bad. And then we get this like really graphic opening where he is, then murdered, or not murdered, but
yeah, he
he
dies.
dies accidentally.
Yeah,
But like
yeah.
obviously there's like some religious force behind that. But like that, like that's really fascinating stuff, like in terms of like like discussing religion like this. Um
Yeah,
it,
like,
y-
this movie is kind of like, again, part of me is scared that I sound like a crazy person talking about this movie, but it is kind of like an endless, not an endless well, but it is a rich well of themes and
yeah.
like things to like talk about in the world, you know?
No,
Like
yeah.
the
I mean, like it's like the way that it incorporates both like power and religion, and like obviously women's bodies and like how
mhm.
those are being used, and even like there's just the other thing that I failed to mention that is a key part of this. Like I said, like that priest and that that we meet in the opening scene has like worked with these specific people who are the villains in this movie. And what we learn is that this has been an ongoing, lengthy operation to birth this antichrist because they keep finding people to have sex with this demon essentially. Like
So
it's like a uh, how would you we
the
don't like
beast.
really
It's
yeah, they call it the beast.
um
It's
and
like a
they
it's like a
they like
wolf
spent
person.
I think it's interesting because they show what I think they call it. They call it the beast, which and the beast is like that is like something that they talk about in the Bible. Um, but it's also like they call it Jekyll, not Jekyll, but like a something with the J.
Right.
Um,
But we see a glimpse of it as well, where
we
like
s- we
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 see
see
it
the
in like
whole thing at the end
yeah,
of the movie.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like throughout the movie, we see bits of it, and I'm gonna be okay. Okay,
Never
we have to be a
mind.
little more structured here because like there's so
No,
much.
yeah, no, I think there's too much to talk about linearly that it's better to just like talk about what comes to mind. But yeah, continue.
Because well just because like oh we bring up the beast and it's like fuck there's the imagery in the beast is the first correct me if I'm wrong, the first time we see the beast is when our main character watches a woman give birth in the orphanage, correct?
Right, where
Do
we
we see a
see
glimpse of it
like
before?
we see through the cry and then we see what comes out. I
Yeah,
don't
so
yeah, I
because
don't think we see it before that.
we need to describe this scene because this is one of the first cases of kind of womanly body horror or like body horror in the movie.
Yeah.
Which birth is already I don't feel bad saying that because birth is just kind of body horror in like real life anyway. um
It is, yeah. I mean, well, like they even have a character say it in the movie where, like, where they're essentially trying to gaslight her because obviously the character knows what the church is doing, but like,
yeah,
but she's kind of like, oh, like people faint during birth all the time, like it's like a hard thing to watch,
yeah.
like it's,
But so our character is watching this woman give birth, and and it's like, oh, this is really uncomfortable, and it's really unsettling, and it's like, oh, this is not good. This is like they're not treating the doctors are not treating her right. She's freaking the fuck out. And then there's a fucking shot of the hand of the beast reaching out of this woman's vagina.
yeah,
It is so crazy. It is so jarring and unexpected. Um,
yeah,
I I really hope that if you are listening to this, you've already seen it, or because it's like that is like
yeah. I
there's a
mean, we already said
huge.
we're in spoiler territory, but it's
I know, but like it's still like I wish that like it's like because it's so unexpected, and it's like it is not an image you see in any other movies where it's like it's because you it's like maybe it's not literally a vagina, but it is implied vagina, right?
right,
You see like it looks like it's reaching out of a vagina. Like actually, it's
yeah,
crazy. It is so upsetting. Um,
yeah. It's tough to watch, and that is, like you mentioned, the first of like many images where we get glimpses at this character because the thing is in the actual like would you call it a ritual? I don't know. Like in the actual like thing that they do to try to impregnate these women, like
mhm,
the like the forced impregnation, so that they could birth the Antichrist. They put like a black like cloth over their face so that they can't actually see the beast.
insane,
Um,
insane.
Also like a terrifying image. I mean, just like every time that like the moment where we see it most, which I referenced earlier, is when our main character has like her full realization of what happened to her, and that recontextualizes the nightclub
Yes. Well, okay.
because
We should say very quickly that Ralph Innocent's so the church is trying to birth the Antichrist, right? But Ralph Innocent's character is there in Rome because he believes that the little girl, played by Nicole Sorens, um,
yeah,
is the offspring of the beast, that they
right,
are going to try to impregnate with the Antichrist. That is what he believes.
yeah.
But then we get this reveal that you're about to say.
Yes, yes, yes. So, well, like Doug said, like that's the key part of the movie, and like the reason why we kind of like do this investigation and have the main character like uncover information and all this stuff is because she has talked to Ralph Innocent's character, and Ralph Innocent like brought up this idea to her that that is what they're trying to do. So
Yeah.
she kind of like does this investigation. Then finally, they are. piecing together there's a lot that happens here, but her roommate does her vows, and while that is going on, the main character finds this like secret passage into this place with a bunch of files where she gets the files for all of like the experiments that they, all of the failed attempts at birthing the Antichrist, because every
Mhm.
single time it has been a girl and they need it to be a boy. And they've been doing this over and over and over again. So she has like all these failed experiments. She takes the files, she brings them to Ralph Ineson. Then, as they're going through those files, it becomes apparent to her, or I don't need to go into detail, but she learns that
That's
the night that she was at
yeah.
the nightclub,
Mhm.
this guy who she hit it off with is actually in service of the church, and they either drugged her or whatever so that they could get her to this place and try to impregnate her with the Antichrist. So the main character is actually the pregnant one in this situation, and not this little girl, because the little girl is too young for them to do it to her yet. They have to wait.
It's
Um,
so powerful, because in the movie, up until this point, because, like, she gets the implication is that she blacked out. Like, they go out and they're
right.
drinking and they're hanging out with these men,
Yeah.
and
She
she
doesn't
blacks
drink,
out.
so, like, it's just like a normal hangover kinda thing for her.
And she doesn't remember what happened the night before, right? And she is like upset by it, and I think the movie is kind of leading us to believe that she had sex with this man, and she is, and like I think that she is ashamed of that idea, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like she liked this guy, but then but like she had sex and she was saving herself for God, and kind of like, and it's like that alone would be like an emotional moment for our character, right? But what actually is revealed in this moment is like, oh no, she did not have sex with this man. This man drugged her. Not this
Yeah.
man, like this man and her roommate were like in cahoots,
Right. Well, that's what I
and
was
like
gonna bring up, because I
yeah,
was like, they don't actually reference her roommate's involvement, but then we do later see that, like, she's in that room among everybody else, so we
yes,
assume that she had to be a part of this plan from the beginning, probably.
yeah, like this man in this room and her roommate, like you know, coerced her to going out to this night, then drugged her, right?
Yeah.
And then they brought her to get literally raped, to be
Yeah.
literally raped by an actual literal monster
Yeah,
in
like,
the name of God.
not human. Um,
Um, that is
it is
fucking crazy.
yeah.
Like,
It It's so dark. It is so fucked up. It is so difficult to watch that scene where she has that realization and, like, remembers the night and, like, realizes what actually happened. It's, like, unbelievable, and then she connects those dots where she's like, "Oh, that," like,
and then
she has this, like, flashback to the guy who earlier in one of the most disturbing scenes in the movie, we see confront her on the street. Well, she confronts him, really. She sees him, and then he tries to run away, and he, like, is, like, apologizing to her a lot, and she's, like, just trying to get him to not run away, and then he is hit by a truck and slammed against a wall,
yeah,
and his body is, like, split into 2. W Like,
insane.
wow.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there is just, like, and this is actually something I wanna talk about in terms of, like, not plot, but rather, you just, like, the context of it as a horror movie, which is that I went into this movie, having I said this to my friend before the movie as well. We were kinda My friend and I were talking, and we were like, "When's the last time we were, like, genuinely, like, terrified watching a horror movie in theaters?" Because me and him were both really, really scared watching Skinamarink, and I looked back at, like, my Letterboxd diary, like, I was, like, looking at, like, horror movies that have come out in the past couple years, and I was like, "Wow, there really hasn't been a movie since, like, Skinamarink where I've, like, come home from it and been, like, terrified after." There's, like, moments where, like, I got scared for a second, but, like, there really hasn't been a movie that, like, left that impact on me.
Mhm.
And I had heard the way that people were talking about The First Omen, and I was like, "Oh, maybe tonight's the night." I was like, "Maybe we're gonna watch something that's, like, genuinely really scary," and that was kind of, like, my relationship to it, but I went into the movie thinking this was going to be something much closer to, like, the studio horror thing we talked about, which is, like,
Right.
jump scare heavy horror movie that, like, gives me nightmares because, like, there's a bunch of scenes that, like, make me uncomfortable in terms of, like, just things jumping out at me,
Yeah, like,
and
it's gonna be like a better version of, like, that new like, Exorcist Believer or something like that.
right,
Yeah.
sure. Like because that stuff genuinely scares me sometimes. Like if you put a lot of jump scares in a movie and you do them right, I'm probably gonna have nightmares when I get home. Like that's just a thing that happens to me.
Mhm.
And but this movie, and there are a few pretty terrifying jump scares in the movie, but in general, did not scare me in that way. But the images and the ideas of the movie, which there are like 5 to 10 to maybe even 15 scenes where you are just watching like pure horror in terms of like what you are actually consuming. And I really hope that somebody who goes into the movie with kind of the same frame of mind that I had, where like, oh, this is going to be like a jump scare heavy movie that like makes me jump in my seat a little bit. I really hope that someone like that does not then come out of this movie complaining. And I hope that people don't approach it from this way of like, this is just going to be like studio, because that's how the average person watches a horror movie, right? Is like they go to the theaters to see a horror movie because they're like, I want to be really scared. And so
Yep.
like their entire experience with the movie is whether or not it scared them.
Right.
And so this is a surprise in that way for me because this is like something totally different than what I thought I was getting, which is like so much scarier than if this was just a bunch of jump scares. Like so much more terrifying than if I had just seen like a regular studio horror movie.
Yeah. There are jump scares in this movie, and there are jump scares that, like, will annoy people in this movie,
Sure.
but the I think all of those jump scares are kind of again, they have, like, a purpose. I think they're all there
Yeah.
to convey how unsettled, our character feels and how,
Yeah,
like,
there's
she
there's,
does
like,
not feel
some
safe.
where there's some where they feel like,
Um,
kinda like like the nun walks behind her and, like, puts her hand on her shoulder and she, like, like, that kinda thing, it's
yeah.
like, they're
But that's
they're
like
doing
our
that. But
character, but,
even
like, that only works 'cause our character is scared. It's not like you know what
yeah,
I
and
mean?
she's even scared
Yeah.
of that specific nun, so it
Yeah,
makes
exactly.
even more like because because this is a point in the movie where she knows that, like, something is up, so it's like
Mhm.
all of them really are in service of the story. I mean, even when she goes to, like, the quote unquote, like, bad room and, like, she sees the, woman from earlier who we were talking about,
Yeah.
kind of,
But
like,
that's not
walk
even
up to the
really a
camera and, like, have this,
yeah.
like, completely, like she's, like, burned and, like, scarred and, like, disgusting and, like, really fucking creepy. Like, all of
That's
these images are really
yeah.
scary.
Most of the horror is, like, the actual like, stuff that's, like, actually scary is stuff
Yeah,
like that where it's, like, where we see the woman, the her vision of that woman that was burned to death,
yeah,
and it's like, "Oh, it's like, this isn't a jump scare." It's like, that is a slow reveal out of darkness. We see her entire figure. We see her slowly approach the screen until we get a close up. We just see and it's, like, unbroken. We see that's what a lot of the horror is like that, where it's like, "Oh, no,
yeah,
this is a scary image. Look at it. Like, look at it. Bear witness to how fucking scary this is, you know?
yeah.
Like
I don't I don't remember which one it is specifically. I think there was 2 moments actually where, like, they were, like, genuinely, like, really horrifying moments where my theater, like, a number of people in my theater started laughing, and I was like, "This is why you can't be watching stuff like this." I was like, "You guys fucking suck." But that's just, like, I don't know, that's just what happens, and that's why I'm referencing that because I'm like, I really hope that, like, more than just you and I
Mhm.
see this movie and are like, "Wow, that was fucking aw," like, I hope that people, like, actually really enjoy it as, like, not just, like, a horror movie that is, like, made to be consumed the way that a normal studio horror movie is, but, like, a horror movie that is, like, genuinely, like, really well made in, like, every possible way, and then, like, even, like and we're talking about horror images, we have to reference this because it's a big part of the movie. There's, like, direct homages to other horror classics that are fucking awesome. Like they work here and you would never really find somebody putting a possession reference in a studio horror movie that is like the fifth movie in a franchise or whatever. Like you would never imagine something like that being in a movie. Um, but it
Yeah,
is.
the
There's like a
possession
very
scene is
overt reference to possession in this movie.
yeah, the possession scene is very important because I think calling an homage is kind of like the only way that you could really talk about it because it is like an homage. It
Yeah.
is the freak out scene in but it's not a recreation. It's just like it is.
No, it's like I mean, it's an entirely different
Yeah,
location, like execution, like the cause of it even, like it's, you
yeah.
know.
But it is like it is definitely that is definitely doing the possession thing, which is something that I'm going to say it. No filmmaker should try and recreate that or like try and
Yeah.
like do it like this. But it works in this movie impossibly. I don't think everybody, especially big possession fans, will think it works as well as maybe you and I do. But it works impossibly, and that's so crazy. Oh, and that whole
I mean,
scene because
I got fucking excited during it, dude. Like, I was watching it and this is coming from somebody who really likes Possession, by the way. You know, like
yeah,
I just watched that movie for the first time this past year, immediately gave it 5 stars. I was like, this fucking rocks. Like Possession is really, really good.
I've seen Possession in
And
theaters. Yeah, I love it.
yeah, like Possession's fucking awesome. And maybe Possession fans won't like it, whatever. But I was watching it and as I realized it was like like it goes on for maybe like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and they're like, oh, they're doing possession. And then I'm watching it and I was like, I couldn't say this to my friend because I knew that my friend had not seen possession, but I was like in my seat, like giddy. I was like, holy shit, like why does this work and why is it fucking awesome? Like, like what the fuck, dude? Like it was so cool.
That well, and that whole the way that they do that too is so cool, I think, because it's this is towards the very end of the movie when they have the files and they're trying to she realizes that she's pregnant and okay, yeah, so she realizes that she's pregnant, that she got fucking raped by a monster and is now impregnant pregnant with a baby that she doesn't fucking want. So she's like freaking out a little bit. But our character, like the actress fucking switches and is acting differently now. And it's like, oh fuck, this is incredible actually how our performer switches into another gear where her voice is different, her facial she physically looks different. And it's like she's same costuming and makeup, but it's like her mannerisms are so different because she's snapped. She's fucking broken now. She's like, I cannot
Yeah.
believe this is happening. So powerful, right? But then and then this possession scene is like that's like the next level of that where it's like, oh, she's like fucking snapped. And it happens like we get into a car accident, whatever. She gets out and then she starts freaking the fuck out. And it's a recreation of the possession freak out scene where she's like fucking pissing and blood's coming out of under her shirt. And it's very good, right? That next time we see her character after this scene ends, after this moment ends, it is the fucking eye shot from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And like, bro, the audacity to have this like extended fucking possession homage lead directly into a direct, like obvious Texas Chainsaw Massacre reference is crazy. That's crazy. Like, what the
In a
fuck?
movie that like feels of that time too. It's like you
Yeah.
really can't make this up. Like it's like I mean, uh, she really knows what she's doing. Arkasha Stevenson, I mean, really knows
I
what she's
listened
doing.
to an interview. I listened to a few interviews with her. I'm gonna also why is looks like a movie not getting interviews with filmmakers? Because I'm a little listen, I'm sorry, dear listener, if you are still there, that you're gonna think I'm annoying right now, but I actually listen to these fucking press junket Zoom interviews with Arkasha Stevenson and Nell Tiger Free about the first Omen. These people don't know ball. These it's not even that they don't know ball, it's like they were asking dumb questions. They were like so many every fucking interviewer basically asked Arkasha Stevenson the same fucking question, and it was like, "How does it feel to be making an Omen prequel? How does it feel to be making a movie in the Omen franchise?" And it's like, "Shut the fuck up, dude." Um,
Which is like
but
a thing we haven't even talked about
yeah,
really
because it
yet in
doesn't
this whole entire
matter. It
yeah.
doesn't fucking
I mean,
matter.
we could get there, but
Yeah,
yeah,
we have to reference it at the end because it does matter at
right.
the end. But no, because like somebody asked Arkasha Stevenson like, oh, about like inspiration like what are like big inspirations for the first omen, and she says that she likes to think that every movie she loves there's a little piece of every movie that she loves in the first omen. And I think that like if you pay attention it's like Oh, that makes sense. There's
Yeah,
either like really obvious over intentional references, like the one to Possession is the most obvious, and then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one. It's obvious to me, but maybe not obvious to everybody. Um,
sure.
like those ones are pretty obvious. But then there's like other like oh, this is like is an idea that's in another movie. Maybe not like it's a intentional reference, but it's an idea in another movie. Like my friend that I saw it with, she loves she's a big M Night fan, and she was like, oh, you think that like the car crash was like a reference to Signs? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Interesting idea. She's talking about like when the guy gets pinned up
Right.
against,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I was
And
like,
it's
oh,
like,
I didn't think about that, but it could be, you know, like
yeah, I mean, why wouldn't it? Yeah, that's damn.
you know,
I didn't even think about that one, but that's a good point. Yeah.
and it's like
Do
stuff like that.
you do you want to quickly talk about the sound design, which is a
Oh my god,
awesome part of
yeah,
this movie?
yeah, dude. If you're gonna go see this movie in theaters, I'm pretty sure it's going to be playing in Dolby until when Civil War comes out. It's probably gonna get taken out. But like,
Yeah.
if you can,
So by the time this episode comes out, you have
one
one
day.
day to go see it in a Dolby theater, probably.
um,
Um,
But seeing it in Dolby, I think, is so real. That's
yeah,
like that's like coolest way to see it because the Dolby it has because so Dolby Cinema, if you don't know, if you're not like a fucking hyper nerd like I am, a hyper dweeb about movie theaters,
yeah.
IMAX cinemas have incredible speaker setups too, right? Where it's 12 channel surround sound. A Dolby Cinema has 128 channel surround sound. It is the most like immersive audio in any movie theater and any like standardized movie theater. And it is fucking amazing. And this movie, right? Um it's funny. My sister that I saw it with the first time, because I've seen this movie twice. Then my sister that I saw it with the first time, she was like, what the fuck? Because there's a moment in the movie where a radio's playing and she thought it was someone's phone. Because it was like the radio was playing at like such a specific moment in the spot in the room where she was like, what the fuck? But our character, we haven't even talked about how our main character here has uh not schizophrenia, but she has like hallucinations.
Right. Well, we did mention it when we were talking about the other woman that she keeps seeing.
Oh
Um,
yes, yeah, right, of course. But she has hallucinations, and they explain how, and it's because of the mark of the beast, and because of
yeah,
all this stuff, like the abuse from the church and stuff. But she has these hallucinations, and that kind of like get worse throughout the film until there's the big reveal, and she has this big freak out moment, right? But so she sees like faces on the walls and stuff, and she hears them whispering, and like
right.
and it's like you hear you're sitting there in the theater and you hear all these whispers coming through like all different
Yeah, like
directions and stuff.
so fucking
It's
cool.
so like it like gives you chills. It's like tingles down
Yeah,
your spine. It's like it's so freaky. Um and
it's
yeah.
yeah.
And that how that
I
plays into the sound is into the soundtrack too with like
right.
this big music
Oh, the score. Yeah, I mean the score is great.
score, not soundtrack, yes.
Yeah, it's no, I mean like really, like it's like once we really like pick this apart the way that we have now, like where we're kind of referencing all these things, it's like they really nailed every aspect. Like, there's not really, a section of the movie where they didn't do well,
Yeah.
um,
It's
in
kind of a
terms of, like,
perfect movie.
like, it kinda fucking
You
rocks.
know, like it's
Like, it's like, I can't believe that I love this movie as much as I do. I think I'm probably gonna end up watching, as like a final thing I wanna mention. The movie ends, we see, uh so after she, gives gives birth to the demon, which the Antichrist. We see that she gives birth to twins actually,
that whole
and
sequence, by the way, where she's giving birth is so upsetting. It's
yeah.
so,
I mean,
so
so tough. We
upsetting.
didn't even really talk about it as a whole, but like, yeah, that we don't have to spoil like every detail of the movie, but
Yeah.
that scene crazy. And then we see that there's twins. There's a boy and a girl, and obviously they want the boy, so they're
They
like
don't give a
burn this.
fuck.
They're like burn this place down, and let them both die in there. They take the boy. They leave, and she gets out because the younger girl Carlita comes
Yes.
and finds her and they escape together. And so her, Carlita, and now her daughter are like living somewhere remote, like in the mountains, like snowy mountains, and like a
Mhm.
cabin. And there's like this really, it's like a 1 minute long scene, but like you they look like different people. Like you see Carlita and you're like, oh my God, like she has somebody who loves her, and it's like the sweetest thing in the world. And then Ralph Ineson's character comes and she's like, you have to fucking leave. And he's
There's
like,
just a
I only came,
shotgun pointing
yeah,
at
she has a
his back.
shotgun pointed at him, and she's like, you have to fucking leave. And he's like, I only came here to warn you. They know you're alive and they are
Yeah.
coming to get you. And then the very last line of the movie is him talking about the child, and then he name drops Damien,
And
who
then so it's
is,
like smash cut to
yeah,
black.
smash cut to black and the credits. And obviously, if you have seen any Omen movie before, then you know who Damien is.
He's the main
But
character of the franchise.
yeah, um, fucking awesome. Like it's like, there's I haven't I watched the very original Omen movie when I was younger, like on TV and like bits. I don't even know that I've seen the whole movie like in totality the whole way through.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm sure there's probably like references to the movie throughout, but like up until then, you can watch this whole movie as its own thing, and then like you get to that very last line, and like that is really the only like moment where you're like, oh, by the way, this is connected to like a larger franchise, and like we have to put this in here because studio, blah blah blah. But like, but it also is still kind of fun regardless. But yeah, so that connects it to the franchise, and like I said, this is like a prequel to that first movie. And what I was gonna say is like now after watching this, I'm like, I think I might go watch like the original Omen, maybe even today, to be honest. Because that like got me hyped to finally like watch it the whole way through. But the
So
first Omen,
there's a little bit of, because we talk about, like, there's this very obvious like direct possession sequence in this movie. Sam Neill plays Damien in the Omen 3
right?
as like adult
Crazy,
Damien.
yeah, crazy little connecting thread. Um, so closing First Omen thoughts. Last things you want to say about the movie, other than that, it's fucking amazing. And the biggest surprise of the year, and according to Doug, the best movie of the year so far, which is not a crazy claim to make at all.
Yes, best movie of the year so far, I believe. It is my favorite movie. Yeah, best movie of the year so far. I'm gonna say it. Kind of a perfect movie.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like I could talk about this movie forever. I think
Yeah, which is which is why the podcast is a bad platform for it, because we can make this a 5-hour episode of us just like being really excited.
we we kind of throw around this idea of doing audio commentaries a lot because I think it's like a fun thing to do. I think this would be like a
Yeah,
good movie for me, you, and Owen to actually do when this comes out on VOD, maybe. Um,
that would be cool. Yeah,
as to kind of like get the ball rolling on that a little bit and do it every now and then. I think that would be fun. Um,
yeah. Um, I'd be super down for that.
yeah.
And hopefully people listening like this movie as much as we do.
Well, yeah. So
Which
how
like
do you
won't be the
think?
case for everybody, but
I watched
um,
last night. I literally never do this. But last night I just went to TikTok and I typed in the first Omen, sorry, and I was just like watching TikTok reviews, and a lot of people make bad videos, but I was
oh
watching
sure.
them,
I mean that's
and
TikTok.
it was like most people's takes were like, oh yeah, this movie's really good, 7 out of
Oh,
10,
I think
like.
people I don't really think there's gonna be too many people who dislike this movie. It's currently at a
Mhm,
3.5 on Letterboxd, which is higher than I would have expected.
mhm,
And that number is climbing from what was a 3.3 when I checked 2 days ago and is now at a 3.5 as more people are starting to see it. I have seen that
mhm.
it has been mostly positively reviewed by critics. I think despite the reactions in my theater kind of, so most people are enjoying this movie. Um, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know that everybody's going to like it as much as us or even recognize just how good this movie is.
Yeah,
But in general, I think there's gonna be like, I don't want to say overwhelmingly, but like mostly positive reaction to this, which is like a miracle that we have this movie that we recognize as like what is kind of a near masterpiece. And in your case, maybe even just a masterpiece.
yeah, I think it's just
And
kind of a masterpiece.
yeah, and like, and yet people are like really like it. Like it's not like this thing that like we really have to, you know, we'll have to defend it to some degree because I don't
Mhm.
know that everybody's gonna watch it and be like, oh, that was a masterpiece. Um, but yeah, it rocks and like people are enjoying it. I hope that people who listen to this enjoy it as well. Um, we can wrap that up there and very quickly go through some news. You know, reminding everybody, as usual, if you like listening to us talk about both of those movies, Monkey Man and The First Omen, you can like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. You can rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can follow us on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and all our social media platforms. Um, we don't have as much news this week, but a few kind of big things. Starting with Dune Messiah is officially in development at Legendary with Denis Villeneuve. It is, you know, it was already rumored to be happening. Now it's like confirmed, like is really happening.
Denis
So
Villeneuve, doesn't he has, like, 4 movies that are currently in development, doesn't he?
right, but I mean, this is like my understanding and the way that it's been reported in the past is like this would be the but like before he makes anything, he's making this probably. I think,
I think it's,
or maybe he's making a movie in
Rendezvous.
between.
I think he's
I
making
don't know.
Rendezvous for, Rama first. I think that's, like
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I do feel like considering where Dune 2 is, it wouldn't be surprising if any other movie he has currently in production, like if they haven't started filming, might get delayed until he makes Dune Messiah. Like that's, you know,
yeah.
that seems like a likely outcome. You know, I love Dune 2. Doug and Owen didn't like it as much, but they still liked it.
I like Dune 2 a lot.
No, I know. I'm just saying, you know, like,
Yeah.
I like both the first two Dune movies. I imagine Messiah will be, you know, different in terms of story, but like obviously we kind of know what we're getting at this point. We know that like it's reliable. Like we know what Denis' vision is with this world and these books. So I don't think there's like too much to say about this all in general because like we already knew that this was going to happen. Like that, none of us were like hearing rumors of him talking about Messiah and being like, oh, he's not going to make it. Like everybody kind of knew that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
So this isn't really like a surprising piece of news. It's just like the confirming piece of news. Like now we know it's official. So yeah, we'll be getting that. Um, Another movie that is maybe sadly official and probably pertains to you a little bit more. The Matrix 5 is in the works with Drew Goddard set to direct.
Write
Um,
and direct, both.
yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
who gives a fuck? I
yeah.
think people are being a little weird about it online. I think people are, like, doing, like, weird moral panic about it, being like, "How could they do this?" And it's like, "Listen, it's just a movie, you know? Just don't watch it, you know?"
Yeah. I
But
mean, you kind of like the thing is, and I get the idea that like the Wachowskis have to be the ones to make it for it to matter. But at the same time, I don't know that anybody ever, and this is coming from somebody who hasn't even seen the sequels yet, which I will watch eventually and probably soon, considering I just rewatched the first one. Um, like, I think when any of this franchise stuff happens, and if you're somebody who's like seen The Matrix, you probably definitely like know this. It's not like a surprise to see franchises get carried on by studios that are like very clearly successful and have like a very big following. Like it's like this is just something that happens and it sucks that it's happening because like we don't want that to be the person directing it. But
yeah.
like but at the same time, you're like, did anybody think this wasn't gonna happen at some point? Like it's like eventually the Wachowskis are gonna want to make other movies, and eventually studios are still gonna want to make money from the Matrix. Like these two things are just like truths that exist.
Yeah, it kinda, like I kinda was an almost I felt like, that they were gonna give up on The Matrix just because the 4th one was, like, such a
True.
critical and financial failure.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
well, who knows though?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know what the reasoning behind that is, but that's the thing that's happening now. Probably,
Yeah,
you know, we'll
I
see.
don't know. We'll see.
Um, Another movie that is happening even sooner that comes out at the end of this year, in December of this year, Marielle Heller's Night Bitch, starring Amy Adams, will be released in December of 2024. It's an adaptation of the novel by Rachel Yoder that follows a woman who is convinced she is turning into a dog. I'll be honest, I think this is kind of a very like obvious thing to happen considering how popular this book is and how much I've heard about it
Oh,
recently.
is it a popular book?
It is a popular book, yeah. It's
Okay.
I see it on a lot of the highlighted shelves at my local Barnes and Noble all the time. It's been recommended to me by people. I It has also been not recommended to me by people. I've talked to lots of people who are like, you would not like that. It's not good. It's a bit of a divisive book in that way.
Okay.
And I've like investigated. I've read the cover, I've read the synopsis, and I'm gonna be honest, doesn't seem like a book I'd be that into. However, uh, it feels like this was like so certain to be made into a movie just based on my understanding of the book. Like I kind of knew this would happen. And Marielle Heller's directing it, who my takeaway from this, which is like this is probably a dumb takeaway that this is like where my mind goes. But this is like kind of like this kind of just has like Oscar campaign for an actress written all over it. Like it's
Yeah,
like
that's what they're saying, isn't it?
because so Marielle Heller has directed her two most recent like feature film jobs have been Can You Ever Forgive Me and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which both got acting Oscar nominations. And this story, woman who's convinced she's turning into a dog, starring Amy Adams of all people, seems kind of perfect for an Oscar
And
performance.
I saw that, like, it's a
And coming out in
Searchlight film,
December of this year,
and, Searchlight, they did, like,
five of the
it's like
last seven Best
yeah,
Actress
5 of
winners
the
or
last
something like
7
that.
Best Actress, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
so but, like, that's, it's hard to, like, predict, like, awards like that off of, like, studios, but obviously, like, studios play a part in, like, how these movies are campaigned for, so, like, and it just seems like set up for, like and I hope it's, like, a really good Amy Adams performance, who is an actor that I really like, and I think she is typically really good and stuff, I just don't know that I'm gonna be, like, that interested in, like, the story based on what I know about the book, but, like, I was talking to a friend of the pod, Sophie, recently because we were talking
yes.
about, um she was giving me some reading recommendations, and then I asked her about this adaptation, and I think we were both kind of in agreement that, like, this seems to me more like something that I want to see in a movie than something I care about reading in a book. Like when I read the synopsis for the book, I was like, I really don't want to read this. But then when I see it as like, oh, Amy Adams movie, which is like this like weird movie about her like thinking she's a dog, I'm like, that's like I'd watch that in movie form. I'm not gonna read the book, but like I'm like, this is kind of like perfect material for a 2 hour movie.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm interested. I don't know. We'll see what comes of it. But I haven't seen Can You Ever Forgive Me, but I know there's like a decent sized group of people who really enjoy that movie like quite a lot. Um, I'm curious. I didn't really like A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which like I don't know, maybe I was just like not that interested in it. I know other people like that movie much more than I do.
I did
Um,
not watch that because I did not care.
yeah, I was just not. It was like not really for me. But this seems like something that's like a little bit more up my alley in terms of like movie version. So yeah, I'm curious. Speaking of people directing things, Craig Gillespie is in talks to direct the Supergirl movie starring Millie Alcock. Um, Interesting choice, I guess. Not really actually. It's like the least interesting choice they could have made. I don't know how they pick them for these things. Like it's
I
just
don't
like
know.
the
It's
guy just comes off of dumb money and they're like, yeah, this is the guy we need to make Supergirl like a Supergirl movie. Like it's just
I
not a
don't
very bold pick at all. Um,
I guess that, what's his fucking name? James Gunn. He's trying to do I guess that he's trying to be like, a Kevin Feige figure over here with these movies. So,
yeah,
maybe like, in theory, the directors don't really matter that much. Um,
yeah.
but I don't know.
Whatever.
I don't know. Whatever.
That's
Whatever.
like the least. It's like the least exciting thing for me, other than the fact that really, I really liked Millie Alcock in House of the Dragon,
Mhm.
and she's obviously like a very young actress who like is seemingly very promising, and now she lands this like major role as like the star of a Supergirl movie. So if it's just kind of like a really shitty movie that's gonna stink that this is kind of like the launching point for her career, and like who knows what happens after that. Because I think she's like very talented. I really liked her in House of the Dragon, but whatever. Otherwise, the movie is pretty much irrelevant to me. Um, Two pieces of casting news for one movie. Jack O'Connell is in talks to star alongside Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler's untitled film as the villain, and
Very
Delroy
cool.
Lindo is also joining the cast. This is shaping up.
Very
I mean,
cool.
we've already talked about this movie like 2 of the last 3 weeks, I want to say, but now we get more people. I think Jack O'Connell's fucking awesome. I think like he really um, can find himself like jumping up in terms of popularity as soon as he starts landing some bigger roles, and maybe this is the start of that as like a really you know, good villain alongside Michael B. Jordan. uh he played a small role in Ferrari, which is probably where you like recognize him from, I guess. I watched him in that movie Little Fish recently, which I thought he was amazing in. I remember seeing him in Unbroken, which felt like at the time, 10 years ago now,
Mhm.
felt like at the time was them trying to like push him on us as like a like leading man, kind of like rise to stardom, and then that never happened, you know. And then he ended up making like these pretty small movies, like never really like going anywhere. And like maybe this is like a second surge for him, you know, like maybe he like delivers this really good performance in a Ryan Coogler movie, and then gets
Y
even more popular as a result. Because I think he's a really talented actor.
Yeah, he's still pretty young too. It's like it's not
Yeah,
like
like I think he's really good. I mean, especially when I was watching him in that movie Little Fish, I was like, this guy, you know, the movie has some moments where I'm like, this is a little bit manipulative, but like him as an actor, I'm like, oh, he's got it.
this Unbroken movie. Oh, I forgot Angelina Jolie fucking directed this.
Yeah, I
But
remember watching that in theaters. That movie, I was like
but
really excited. That was one of my favorite movies when it came out. That's where I was in 2014, 10 years ago.
but
Um,
it's I just clicked on it on Letterboxd and I like on the activity from friends, it's just people that have given it 2 stars. It's just like 8 people that have given it 2 stars.
it has like a 3.5 on
Yeah.
Letterboxd. I think I gave it 2 stars as well.
Yeah, you're yeah.
um, yeah, it's yeah, it's a movie. But anyway, but he's a very talented actor. And Delroy Lindo's in the cast as well. Like this is an exciting movie. This is good stuff. And then our last piece of news, maybe like the biggest point of conversation over the past week, is that Alex Garland said that he plans to no longer direct films for the foreseeable future. He still plans to work as a screenwriter and will still be co-directing his upcoming film Warfare that we talked about on the podcast a little bit ago.
Yeah.
He One of his quotes was that he has fallen out of love with filmmaking, but he was also quoted saying, that screenwriting to him is still filmmaking, and he was like, you can't erase screenwriters and whatever. And from and he was saying that filmmaking is not the preserve solely of directors. So he sees himself as more of a screenwriter for the foreseeable future.
I think this
And
arc in his career makes sense.
yeah, and one thing that I saw is people like getting pretty excited about this piece of news, which, like,
Yeah.
I have no problem with, because personally, what like it's the internet and I don't really care, and I don't really care for him as a filmmaker either. Um, I do
Yeah.
think I do think that I can relate in a way to this idea of what he says, that him saying this thing of like, I've fallen out of love with filmmaking, and I do think it's like worth considering what that means, and like the context in which he's saying that, and like maybe where he is, not as a filmmaker but as like a human being. There was a time in my life when I was much younger, and before I was in love with movies the way that I am now. Not that I was never in love with movies, but
Mhm.
my biggest passion in life for a long time was just simply playing basketball. And there was a time where things happened to me as a basketball player that made me not enjoy playing basketball anymore. This thing that I had loved doing since I was a kid. I was like, I don't enjoy doing this anymore. Like, it made me feel like shit emotionally. And I'm like, maybe we should just consider that, like, he's just talking about the process of being a director. Like, I don't think that
That's what I was
that,
thinking. Is
I
yeah,
don't think that he's like worried about, like, I don't think that his relationship with the art has changed. I don't think that he like does not like the idea of filmmaking and films. I think
yeah,
there's obviously like something that has to have occurred in his life, like something that is going on that makes him not enjoy being on set as a director. Because
yeah,
like he
yes,
wouldn't continue as a screenwriter if he didn't care about movies. So I think it's worth considering that, like, clearly something is happening that has led him to be like, I don't want to do this for a while.
yeah.
And
People were
I think
calling him
that's
like
like
a pussy
fine.
on Twitter and stuff,
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
was like,
like,
that's like whatever. I
you
don't
guys
like.
are like, this is not like he's not running from the grind. It's like this is not
Yeah.
like it's not like it's
I
not
don't
he's
know.
not
It's
giving up.
yeah, it's a ve
This is
you know,
because
I referenced that basketball thing. It's like that happened to me, and then it took until however many years later, like after I had graduated high school, to
yeah.
be like where I'm at now, where I'm like, I still love playing basketball. Like I do that shit all the time, and like I kind of like care about it again. And it's like that could totally happen with anything you're passionate about. Like it's like you maybe the guy just needs a break, dude. Like maybe he's like not mentally okay. Like maybe there's like something going on in his life
I
that makes
think
him not enjoy doing this thing. Like it's fine.
understanding the arc of his career, I think, is helpful too because he's older. Like Alex Garland is older than I think maybe people might realize because he hasn't made that many movies. Um,
Yeah.
because he was a novelist that wrote books
Right.
that people read, right? That was like that's how he got famous. And then he started writing adaptations of his books into screenplays, and then he started writing original screenplays and collaborating with filmmakers like Alex Garland and stuff. I don't think that
He
he considered becoming a filmmaker until the movie Dread that he wrote happened, because I think that was the moment where he realized, like, oh, I don't like how this movie's coming out, and the only way for me to control how my screenplays are like shown on screen is for me to actually direct the movies. And then that's when he started directing, right? Um, so it's not like he probably, he's made this is fourth movie that he's directing. He also did a TV show that he directed. I think he's just at a spot right probably now, like you said, where it's like it's not about the movies, it's about him probably not enjoying this process, you know? It's like this was like a midlife, like kind of like later in life career change where he's like, okay, I'm gonna actually direct these movies too instead of just be a writer. Um and he
yeah,
did that, and now he's like Civil War, seemingly a really big movie, like Ex Machina, Devs, Annihilation, even Men, especially Men. Like these are all kind of like smaller movies, like not a huge cast, not a ton of locations. Civil War seems like it has a huge cast with a shit ton of locations and special effects shots and all this stuff. It's probably a really hard movie to be on set directing. So it's like
yeah,
he's probably just fucking burnt out. um,
yeah. Um, but that's that as far as Alex Garland news
yeah.
goes. And I left that for last specifically because we're gonna wrap up there. And next week, episode 62, we're gonna be talking about Alex Garland's new movie. So
Civil War.
um, so that is the topic for next week, and we'll see you later.